The Texas sun hung low in the sky, painting the dusty earth of the Crawford Ranch with golden light. The air was thick with the heat of late summer, and the occasional rustle of denim and the creak of old boots filled the air as ranchers gathered for the annual livestock auction. It wasn't just an event, it was a tradition, an unspoken competition among the locals. Liam Grayson stood at the edge of the crowd, his weathered hands resting on the worn wood of the fence. His eyes scanned the bustling auction ring where the usual assortment of cattle and horses were being sold off to the highest bidder. But Liam wasn't here for just any horse. He was here because he needed to feel something again, something beyond the emptiness that had settled in his chest since his wife's passing. As he wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, he noticed the laughter of the crowd growing louder. It wasn't a good-natured laughter, but rather the kind that came from mockery. His gaze shifted to the center of the ring, where a massive draft horse was being led forward. The horse, a massive chestnut-colored draft with a tangled mane and a bold white blaze down his face, seemed out of place among the leaner, more energetic horses that typically filled the auction yard. The horse's thick frame made him appear sluggish, and his size immediately caught the attention of the crowd. "Well, damn," one of the ranchers snorted from the back. "Did someone roll him here instead of lead him?" The laughter followed, loud and uninhibited. Liam felt the familiar twinge of annoyance. These were the same men who thought the ranch could only survive on strength and speed, that a horse's worth could only be measured by its ability to run. What they didn't understand, what they could never understand, was the value of something or someone who could persevere through hardship. The auctioneer cleared his throat, trying to regain control. Lot number 27, Belgian Cross, 8 years old. Strong, works well, but a bit on the heavy side, the auctioneer announced, his voice more mechanical than enthusiastic. More laughter rippled through the crowd as the horse was paraded in front of them. The horse's chest heaved with each breath, but his tired eyes remained calm, almost resigned to the ridicule. Liam didn't look at the other men, didn't bother to glance at their jeers. He just stared at the horse, as if something in the animal's eyes spoke to him. Liam knew what it was like to carry weight, both physical and emotional, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt a strange kinship with the horse. There was something about the horse's quiet dignity, something in the way he stood still amidst the ridicule that struck a chord in Liam's heart. Without thinking, Liam stepped forward, his boots crunching against the gravel beneath him. He raised his hand, the motion slow but purposeful. $500, Liam called out. A few heads turned in surprise, and the laughter faltered for a moment. 500 was no small amount for a horse that had been laughed at, a horse many would consider useless. But Liam wasn't thinking about the horse's size or weight. He was thinking about the way the horse had held his ground in the face of judgment, about how, in some way, the horse's struggle mirrored his own. The auctioneer looked up, unsure if he had heard correctly. 500, he repeated, as if confirming a mistake. Do I hear 6? The crowd remained silent. It was a large sum for a horse that didn't seem to have much value, but Liam wasn't swayed by the murmurs or the sneers that followed. His mind was set. Going once, the auctioneer said, hesitating. Liam didn't flinch. His eyes were locked onto the horse, and the world around him seemed to quiet. Going twice, the auctioneer called again, his voice uncertain. The gavel came down with a decisive crack. Sold. Liam took a step forward, the crowd slowly parting as he approached the horse. No one spoke, though Liam could feel their eyes following him, judging him for his decision. But he didn't care. All he cared about was the horse. The horse didn't resist as Liam walked up to him. There was no fear, no panic, just a calm acceptance. The horse, though large and heavy, was gentle, his tired eyes meeting Liam's with a kind of quiet understanding. Liam's hand rested on the horse's thick neck. "I'm going to call you Rusty," he murmured. "We've both seen better days." The sound of the crowd faded as Liam led the horse out of the ring. He didn't look back at the murmuring ranchers or their mocking smiles. The world felt quieter now, the weight of the past momentarily lifted by the simple act of making a choice, of choosing something that others had dismissed. As he guided Rusty toward the truck, Liam felt a sense of purpose stirring within him. This wasn't just a horse. This was a chance to heal, a chance to rebuild, for both of them. He didn't know what it would take to help Rusty, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let this horse be another lost cause. Not when he saw so much of himself in the animal's tired eyes. And so, with the sun dipping lower behind the hills, Liam Grayson left the auction with a heavy horse and a lighter heart, wondering just how far the road ahead would take him. The truck's engine hummed steadily as it rumbled down the long dirt road leading back to the Grayson ranch. Rusty, a heavy chestnut-colored draft horse, shifted uneasily in the trailer behind them. Liam Grayson's grip on the steering wheel tightened as he drove, his mind occupied with more than just the rough terrain in front of him. He could still hear the jeers of the auction crowd echoing in his head. Those who had mocked Rusty, those who had seen nothing but a burden, a joke. But Liam saw something different. "Looks like you've got a project ahead of you, huh?" Martha Lane, the local animal rescuer, had said when Liam called her earlier. "Maybe this horse is what you need to get out of the dark." Liam wasn't sure if Martha's words were meant to be comforting or just a gentle nudge in the right direction. Either way, she had a point. For too long, Liam had been living in the shadows of grief and regret. But now, for the first time in years, he felt like he might have found something worth fighting for. Someone, rather than something. When they finally reached the ranch, the familiar sights of the barn and paddock did little to ease the heaviness in Liam's chest. As he parked the truck, Rusty shifted in the trailer, his massive body shifting uneasily. Liam didn't rush. He knew what it was like to feel displaced, unsure, alone. "Let's get you settled in," Liam muttered under his breath as he stepped out of the truck, his boots crunching against the dry earth. The ranch, which had once been a place of warmth and activity, now felt cold and distant. The loss of his wife, Grace, had left a hole in the place. The silence that had settled in ever since she passed had taken its toll, both on Liam and the land they had once worked together. There had been no joy in the days since, just the burden of carrying on. Liam opened the trailer, and Rusty hesitated for a moment before stepping down onto the gravel. His heavy hooves hit the ground with a soft thud as he gingerly made his way into the paddock. Liam didn't rush him. He could feel the weight of Rusty's hesitations, the uncertainty in every step, and it mirrored his own struggles. He led the horse into a quiet corner of the paddock where the sun had just begun to dip below the horizon. "You're not so different from me, are you?" Liam muttered to the horse, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of his lips. "We've both seen better days." As the truck's engine faded, Liam's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of another truck approaching. It was Tommy. Liam's heart sank slightly. The distance between him and his son had been growing for years, and every time Tommy came around, there was a sense of discomfort between them that Liam couldn't shake. It wasn't just the years of silence, but the weight of everything they had left unsaid. Tommy Grayson stepped out of the truck, his sharp features framed by the dimming light of the evening. He was in his early 30s now, a far cry from the rebellious young man who had left the ranch years ago. His clothes were a far cry from the dusty rancher's boots and jeans that Liam wore. Tommy had adopted a sharper, more urban style since moving away. tight jeans, a leather jacket, and a look of skepticism that had been a constant in their interactions for as long as Liam could remember. Liam watched as Tommy took in the sight of the new horse in the paddock. His gaze flickered from the horse to his father, then back to the animal with a look of disdain. "Really?" Tommy asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and irritation. "This is what you're doing now? Another lost cause?" Liam could feel the tension building between them. It wasn't just Tommy's words, it was everything that was unsaid. The years of absence, of Tommy distancing himself from the ranch, and from him. Tommy had never understood why Liam had stayed behind, why he hadn't left after Grace passed. But the truth was, Liam didn't know how to leave. The ranch was all he had left of her. "You don't get it, Tommy," Liam said quietly, his voice rough with unspoken emotion. "This horse, he's got something. Something no one else sees. You've got to trust me on this." Tommy's eyebrows furrowed. "Trust you?" He shook his head. "This is ridiculous, Dad. You can't just fix everything with another animal. This is a joke." Liam's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer right away. He could feel the sting of his son's words, but deep down he understood. Tommy was angry, not at the horse, but at the way things had turned out between them, at the way Liam had handled the loss of his mother. For Tommy, everything had become a reminder of what was missing, of the family they had once been. Liam had tried, but maybe he hadn't tried hard enough. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to fix things that weren't just about the farm. "You don't have to stay, Tommy," Liam said after a long silence. "I'm not asking you to be here, but I'm asking you to give this a chance, for me, for Rusty, maybe for us." Tommy looked away, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something that Liam hadn't seen in a long time. He wasn't sure what it was, but it was enough to make him believe that there might be a way forward. "I'll stay a bit," Tommy muttered, his tone softer now, "but I'm not making any promises." Liam gave a small nod, thankful for whatever scrap of understanding he could get. The next few days were quiet as the two men slowly found their rhythm again, though it was far from easy. Tommy's skepticism remained, but Liam could see small signs of change. Tommy helping with Rusty's grooming, even giving him the occasional carrot as if testing the waters of something unfamiliar. There was no instant bonding, but it was something. The mornings were spent tending to Rusty, cleaning his coat, and slowly breaking through the horse's hesitation. Rusty was, in many ways, like Liam, heavy, worn down, but still fighting. As the days passed, Tommy's resistance began to fade, not just toward Rusty, but toward his father as well. And in those small moments, as the sun set behind the fields and the ranch seemed to come back to life in a way it hadn't in years, Liam started to believe that maybe Rusty wasn't just a horse. Maybe, just maybe, he was a new beginning. The mornings at the Grayson Ranch were filled with the familiar sound of the wind rustling through the grass, the distant hum of the tractor in the fields, and the rhythmic clop of hooves on dirt. But for Liam, those sounds now felt different. They felt fuller, as though the land itself was breathing again after years of stagnation. And it wasn't just the land, it was the ranch, it was him, and maybe, just maybe, it was even his son. Rusty was becoming part of the rhythm of the ranch, and while the heavy draft horse wasn't the most graceful, he had a quiet strength that kept Liam coming back to the paddock every day. There were no sudden bursts of energy, no wild antics like some of the younger horses in the neighboring fields, but Rusty had something else. Patience. The kind of patience that Liam had forgotten he had. It had been a week since the auction, and every day Rusty was a little more comfortable in his surroundings, though the horse was far from trusting. Liam's initial hope that the horse would be a quick fixer-upper had faded, Rusty was, after all, a reflection of Liam himself, broken, weathered, and in need of time. A part of Liam had thought that bringing the horse home would restore him, just as he hoped it would restore the ranch, but it wasn't that simple. Nothing worthwhile ever was. "Rusty?" Liam muttered, crouching down next to the horse in the paddock. He stroked the rough chestnut fur along the horse's neck. Rusty turned his head slightly, eyes soft with hesitation, but not fear. It was a start. Tommy, who had been more engaged in helping with the farm in the past few days, walked up from the barn with a bucket of oats. He had been quieter than usual, almost contemplative, and it had begun to worry Liam. It wasn't the bitterness that had once characterized their conversations. It was the silence, the absence of words. It felt like Tommy was holding something back, and Liam had no idea how to reach him. "You know," Tommy said, his voice distant, as he began to unload the oats into the trough. "It's been a while since I've seen you care about something this much." Liam glanced at his son, noting the careful way Tommy avoided eye contact. There was no judgment in his voice, just an observation, but it stung nonetheless. "I care about the ranch, Tommy," Liam replied, his tone measured. "It's not just about Rusty. It's about getting this place back for both of us." Tommy didn't respond right away. He crouched down beside the trough, stirring the oats as if it required all of his focus. Liam couldn't help but feel that Tommy was still waiting for something. Maybe for Liam to apologize for the years they had lost, or maybe for some kind of recognition of his own struggle. "Do you think it's too late?" Tommy asked suddenly, his voice softer now, almost as if he was testing the waters of a much deeper conversation. Liam didn't know what to say at first. There were so many layers to the question, so many things left unsaid between them. Could they ever fix the years of silence and disappointment? Could the ranch be more than just a place they worked? Could it be home again? "It's never too late, Tommy," Liam said finally. His voice was firm, but it was a promise. "Not as long as there's something worth fighting for." Rusty stood nearby, contentedly munching the oats, seemingly unfazed by the tension in the air. But Liam noticed how Tommy's gaze lingered on the horse. There was something unspoken between them, something that was beginning to shift. For the first time in years, Tommy was starting to see that the ranch could be more than just a reminder of what had been lost. It could be a place to rebuild. The next few days were quieter than usual, but there was a shift in the air, something unspoken but palpable. Tommy began helping more willingly, not with the forced compliance of before, but with a growing sense of purpose. He would fix fences alongside his father, his hands working steadily, his brow furrowed in thought. It wasn't that Tommy was suddenly the son Liam had hoped for, but he was beginning to thaw, bit by bit. He started to talk about things, not just the ranch, but the years he had spent away from home, the things he had seen, and the reasons he had left. The walls that had kept him distant for so long were slowly coming down. Rusty, for his part, was also changing. While he wasn't the fastest or the flashiest, he had something that couldn't be overlooked. His endurance was unmatched. When Liam would take him out for a walk, Rusty would lumber slowly at first, but the longer they spent together, the stronger the horse seemed to grow. He wasn't just a draft horse. He was something more, something that Liam had come to understand in the most profound way possible. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple, Liam found himself in the paddock with Rusty. Tommy had gone inside for dinner, and for a brief moment Liam was alone with his thoughts. He stood beside the horse who was quietly grazing on the grass, and for the first time in a long time he felt at peace. "I didn't think I needed something like you, Rusty," Liam whispered, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "I thought I could just keep going, pretending like I didn't care, but you're teaching me to care again." Rusty's head turned slightly toward Liam, his soft brown eyes meeting Liam's gaze. The connection between them was quiet but undeniable, like two souls that had found each other in the chaos. Liam exhaled deeply, letting the weight of the past few years fall from his shoulders. He wasn't alone anymore, not in the way he had been for so long. Rusty had become more than just a horse to him. He was a symbol of the possibility of change, a reminder that even the most broken things could be fixed with time, patience, and a little faith. It was then that Tommy walked back out to the paddock, a plate of food in hand. He had a hesitant look on his face, but he didn't hesitate to sit down on the fence and watch Liam with Rusty. "I'll take over for you tomorrow," Tommy said quietly, his eyes never leaving the horse. "I think he's ready for more work." Liam turned to look at his son, surprised. "You sure about that?" Tommy gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Yeah, I think I'm ready." Liam nodded, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and relief. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, not just for Rusty, but for all of them. It wasn't just about fixing a ranch or a horse, it was about fixing a family, one small step at a time. And for the first time in years, Liam believed that it might be possible. Maybe it was time to stop living in the past and start building something new, something worth fighting for. The sun rose over the horizon with a soft pink glow, casting long shadows over the Grayson Ranch. The air was cool for early summer, and the fields once neglected now seemed to be thriving under the new sense of purpose that had settled into the land. The sounds of hooves and clinking tack filled the air as Liam and Tommy prepared Rusty for his first real test. Liam adjusted the saddle on Rusty's broad back, the massive horse standing patiently in the paddock. The horse had come a long way in the last month. He was stronger, more responsive, and his patience had proven to be more than just a survival instinct. He wasn't the fastest or the most graceful, but Rusty had proven he had something that no one had expected. He had heart. Tommy stood nearby, holding the reins, his expression a mix of doubt and reluctant optimism. Despite everything that had happened between them, there was a connection beginning to grow between father and son. Tommy's earlier cynicism had started to fade, replaced by something more akin to respect. He was still unsure of the horse, but there was a flicker of belief in his eyes now. Rusty had surprised them both, but today he would have to prove it again. "Ready?" Liam's voice broke through Tommy's thoughts. Tommy nodded, but didn't say anything. His mind was elsewhere, on the competition that awaited them. The local competition wasn't a big event, but it was enough to draw attention. More importantly, it was an opportunity to show that Rusty wasn't just a joke, that he had the strength to contribute to the ranch, just as Liam had believed from the beginning. "We're doing this for him, Tommy," Liam said, his voice calm but firm. "Rusty's more than just a project. He's part of this ranch now, part of us." Tommy glanced at his father, noticing the conviction in his eyes. He didn't quite understand it yet, but he could feel the weight of Liam's words. There was something unspoken between them, a need to prove something, to prove that they hadn't given up on each other, or on themselves. "Yeah," Tommy muttered, brushing a strand of hair out of his eyes. "Let's see what he's got." The competition grounds were just a few miles from the ranch, nestled at the edge of town. It wasn't much. An old rodeo arena with bleachers that had seen better days, and a dusty track worn down by years of use. The crowd was small but eager, mostly ranchers and local families who came to watch the animals compete in simple events, barrel racing, roping, and of course, the obstacle course. Liam and Tommy led Rusty into the ring, their boots crunching against the dry dirt. The other competitors looked on with curiosity, some snickering at the size of Rusty, others more intrigued than they let on. Liam felt the weight of the stares, but he didn't flinch. He was here for Rusty, not for the crowd. "Lot of people don't think this horse has what it takes," said a voice behind them. Liam turned to find Martha Lane standing there, a knowing smile on her face. "But you do," she added, eyes twinkling. Liam nodded. "He's ready." Tommy, standing beside his father, rolled his eyes. "Ready for what? To trip over himself?" Martha laughed softly, her voice carrying a mix of wisdom and warmth. "You'd be surprised, Tommy. Sometimes the ones who struggle the most are the ones who come through when it counts." Tommy didn't respond. He wasn't convinced yet, but he had learned to trust Martha's insight over the years. There was something about the way she spoke, always with quiet authority, that made him feel like maybe, just maybe, there was more to Rusty than the world had given him credit for. The bell rang, signaling the start of the event. The first competitor, a young cowboy on a sleek, muscular gelding, took off around the barrels, his horse weaving in and out with speed and precision. The crowd cheered, and Tommy felt the weight of expectation settle heavily on his chest. They weren't here just to compete. They were here to prove something. Liam patted Rusty's neck. "You've got this," he said, more to himself than to the horse. "We've got this." As the announcer called their names, Tommy mounted Rusty, his hands gripping the reins with a mixture of hesitation and determination. Rusty shifted his weight, snorting softly, but remained steady. It was the first time Tommy had ridden the horse in front of an audience, and the pressure was mounting. Liam's eyes never left the pair, his expression a mask of calm determination. He knew what was at stake. Rusty started slow, his massive body lurching slightly with each step. The crowd watched, some with amusement, others with skepticism. Tommy, however, focused on the task at hand. He urged Rusty forward, maneuvering him carefully through the obstacle course. The horse's stride wasn't quick, but it was steady, and for every awkward moment there was a surge of grace that Tommy hadn't expected. "Come on, boy," Tommy muttered, his voice steady. "You can do it." Rusty's hooves thudded against the ground, heavy but purposeful. The obstacles were simple: barrels to weave around, a small jump to clear, and a tight turn to navigate. And though Rusty wasn't as fast as some of the other competitors, he had something they didn't: patience. Rusty took each task at his own pace, careful and sure of himself, not rushing, but making steady progress. As they approached the final barrel, Tommy could feel the tension in the air. This was the moment. He leaned forward, urging Rusty into a gentle gallop, and together they rounded the barrel, their movements in sync. The crowd's laughter had faded into a quiet murmur of disbelief as they completed the final stretch. Rusty cleared the jump effortlessly, landing softly on the other side. Tommy slowed Rusty, guiding him across the finish line. The crowd erupted into applause, a mix of surprise and admiration. Tommy exhaled, feeling the weight of the moment lift from his shoulders. He hadn't expected the horse to do so well, but Rusty had proven himself in a way no one had anticipated. Liam's eyes were wide, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He had always believed in the horse, but seeing it in action, seeing it firsthand, was something different entirely. Martha clapped Tommy on the back as he dismounted. "I told you, didn't I?" Tommy looked at his father, the skepticism in his eyes replaced by something else: respect. "I guess he's got more to him than I thought." Liam nodded, his chest swelling with pride. "He's got everything we need." As they walked back to the barn, The tension between father and son had shifted. There were still things left unsaid, but in that moment, they both knew one thing for certain. Rusty wasn't just a horse. He was a reminder of what they could be, together. The day ended with a sense of accomplishment that had been missing from the ranch for too long. Rusty had proven himself, and in doing so he had given Liam and Tommy something they hadn't had in years, a reason to believe. As the sun set behind the ranch, Liam couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. There was still much to be done, but for the first time in a long while, the future seemed bright. The morning sun was still low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the Grayson Ranch. The fields, once wild and overgrown, now looked groomed, and the sound of hooves had replaced the silence that had once hung over the land. The breeze carried the scent of fresh hay and earth, mixing with the distant aroma of coffee from the kitchen. For the first time in years, Liam felt a genuine sense of peace. Rusty stood in the paddock, his large frame now more confident, more settled. His coat had a healthy shine to it, and his movements were no longer slow and labored, but purposeful and strong. It was a stark contrast to the exhausted, overburdened horse that had first been brought to the ranch. Liam stood at the fence, watching the horse, a cup of coffee in his hands. The bond between them had grown over the past month, and now, with each passing day, it was stronger than before. Rusty had proven himself at the competition, but today wasn't about the horse's strength in a contest. Today was about proving that the healing process wasn't just for Rusty. It was for the Grayson family as well. Tommy was at the barn, working on the repairs that needed to be done. The storm had damaged more than just the fences, and the barn had been left in a state of disrepair. But with each nail driven into the wood, each board replaced, something was mended inside the family as well. Tommy was no longer the same man who had left for the city years ago. He had come back to the ranch not just to help his father, but to rebuild their relationship, and it was through these quiet moments of working side by side that the walls between them began to come down. Liam set his coffee cup on the fence, the warmth of the morning sun on his back. His thoughts drifted to his wife, June. She had been the one who had always seen the potential in others, even when they couldn't see it in themselves. He missed her every day, but somehow he felt closer to her now. Maybe it was because, for the first time in years, he was truly living the way she had always encouraged him to live. The ranch wasn't just a place of work anymore. It was a home. It was healing. Tommy walked over to the fence, his boots crunching against the gravel. There was a tiredness in his eyes, but it wasn't the kind of exhaustion that came from running away. This was different. It was the kind that came from facing truths that had been buried for far too long. "Dad," Tommy said, his voice softer than usual, "I've been thinking about staying, about coming back here for good." Liam turned, meeting his son's eyes. There had always been a distance between them, something unspoken, a wound that had festered for years. But in the way Tommy was looking at him now, Liam could see that the barrier was finally beginning to crumble. "You don't have to stay if you don't want to," Liam said quietly. "But if you do, if you want to help rebuild this place, it'll be here waiting for you. We can do this together." Tommy's gaze flickered to Rusty, who was now grazing near the fence, and then back to his father. "I think I can do it. I think I can help make this place what it used to be, what it can still be." Liam's heart swelled with something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not just for the ranch, but for his son, for the future they could still share. "Rusty's taught me something," Tommy continued, looking down at the ground for a moment. "Not just about working with animals, but about being patient, being part of something bigger than myself." Liam nodded, understanding exactly what Tommy meant. It wasn't just about fixing fences or restoring the barn. It was about healing the wounds between them, the years of silence, the distance. It was about finding their place in the world again, together. As the two of them stood in silence, Martha Lane drove up the long driveway in her old truck. She pulled up next to them, the engine sputtering as she turned it off. "Well, look at you two," she said with a smile, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Working hard, huh?" "We're trying," Tommy replied with a half-smile. "I think I'm ready to stick around." Martha leaned against the truck, arms crossed. "I'm glad to hear it. This place needs the Graysons. Not just the ranch, but you both." She looked out at Rusty, then back at Liam and Tommy. "And, I've been thinking about what you said, Liam. About giving Rusty a place here. I've got some ideas." Liam raised an eyebrow. "What kind of ideas?" Martha grinned. "You're not the only one who's seen what that horse can do. There's a place down in the city that works with horses like him, rehab, therapy. I think Rusty's the perfect candidate for something like that. He's got the heart for it. And with the way things are going around here, it could be a good opportunity for the ranch." Tommy's eyes widened slightly. "You mean we could do something more with him than just work him?" "That's exactly what I mean," Martha said. "There's a real demand for therapy animals. And Rusty's exactly the kind of horse people need, steady, calm, and full of heart. You've got the space, and with a little help, you could set up a program right here. It could change everything." Liam thought about it for a moment, looking over at Rusty, who had stopped grazing and was now looking back at them, ears pricked forward. He saw it, the same strength and resilience that had brought him to the ranch. But now, it was a strength that could be used for something more, something bigger. "I like the sound of that," Liam said, a rare smile forming on his face. "What do you think, Tommy?" Tommy nodded, a spark of excitement lighting up his eyes. "Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Let's do it." And just like that, everything changed. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was a place of healing, of second chances, and of new beginnings. Together, the Graysons, father, son, and Rusty, would forge a new path, one that honored the past while looking ahead to the future. As the days stretched on, the three of them worked together to plan the new program. Martha shared her ideas for getting started, and Tommy pitched in with his own thoughts, his hands no longer reluctant to get dirty. The sound of hammers and nails filled the air as they worked to expand the barn, preparing the space for their new venture. By evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky and the soft colors of twilight spread across the land, Liam stood at the edge of the paddock, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Rusty was grazing peacefully nearby, and Tommy was adjusting the fencing. For the first time in a long while, Liam felt a sense of peace settle deep in his bones. "Mom would have liked this," Tommy said, his voice quiet but full of meaning. Liam turned to face him. "Yeah, she would have understood this better than I do." They both stood there for a while, watching the fading light. The past was still there, but it no longer held them captive. They had a future ahead of them, one built on second chances, on healing, and on the unbreakable bond between a father, a son, and a horse. The Grayson Ranch was alive again, and this time it was ready for whatever came next.